Welcome to What is Going for new thought from the edge of Each week on OMTimes' flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandy Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Here is your host, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello. If you've been feeling a strange sense of displacement of late, as if part of you has slipped out of sync with the person you've always believed yourself to be, stay tuned. For tonight, our go-to energy intuitives, authors, and spiritual facilitators, Jim Self, Lee Harris, and Suzy Miller, will be sharing their own higher perspectives on how the cosmic energies will be influencing us this month. Lee Harris joins me in segment 2 to explain why November is going to be a month of very elevated energy, with daydreams, flashbacks, and continuing identity shifts, rearranging the emotional, psychic, and psychological debris inside of us. And we're going to switch it up a little bit because Jim Self isn't here quite yet. So we're going to kick off tonight with Suzy Miller, who's going to give us her own expanded perspective on these themes. Suzy, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, as always.
So you and I had a conversation earlier, and I was telling you about Lee's energy update, and you were also picking up on very much the same kind of things, and many of the people that you're working with were experiencing the same things too. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, repeat to our listeners the conversation you and I had earlier about daydreams, flashbacks, and continuing identity shifts? What's going on here?
Yeah, I think we're getting real live in time. Outside of time experiences. I mean, I think we're getting this opportunity right now to, you were saying that, Lee was talking about flashbacks and daydreams and things like that were coming to people right now. And a lot of times, when we have retrogrades or something like that, those experiences happen fairly frequently. But what I'm finding really fascinating right now is that we're getting this opportunity to function in no time. We're getting the opportunity to function outside of time. So from my vantage point anyway, some of these experiences that are showing up, so these people that are coming in from the past, or the daydreams that we're having, or maybe even the flashes forward. A lot of people are talking about that too, where, oh my gosh, it's like almost like I saw myself like a future self or a different dimensional self, or it could be any different kind of experience. I think that those are they're all happening right now because we literally are getting the experience of no time. It's all right here, and it's all right here for us to be aware of now. And what I've been telling, or talking to the people that I've been working with, count it not as a flash forward or a flashback or some different kind of experience. Count it as information that is required right here, right now for your full integration. Does that make sense?
Kind of. Tell me what that means.
Well,
when you say count it.
Yeah, instead of making it mean, because the mental mind goes, oh, why am I thinking about that again? Why am I going over that same issue with that same person? Or why am I spending so much time kind of out of the quote unquote now, or out of the moment, and thinking about something that might happen in the future? What I'd like to suggest is that we get a little bit of a perceptual shift. So, or give ourselves a little bit of a perceptual shift and say all of that information is required right here, right now. All of that information is needed in this now moment And all of it is in this now moment. You're actually not in the past, and you're not in the future, and you're not in some other realm. You can only be right here, right now, right? And so assume, I guess the best way to say it is, assume that your awareness is big enough to bring all of that information right here, right now. You're not going to anything. It simply is all available to you in this moment. So if our minds want to say that's the past or that's the future, that's not really accurate. It's not the past, it's not the future, it's all right here, right now, and it's all information that is needed and required right here, right now, for us to understand the vastness of who we actually are.
So if that information is required, how do we actually use it?
Well, the mental mind goes right into, what do I do with it, right? Sandy says, Bear, I can hear you. What do I do with that information? This is another thing that's shifting, where it's really not about doing anything with it. It's simply about awareness. It's simply about, this is what's present in the environment. Just like if it was, say it was something that we've, some past experience that we're still working through, or say we're working on, we can think about it forever. We can try to do something about it, but nothing actually gets done, in all that thought, in all those thought processes, nothing actually gets done. So there's nothing to do but be aware of what is arising. And when something shows up, when anything is showing up, just asking ourselves, it's just an awareness. That's all we need to know. And what loops us back into the mind and loops us back into our old programming is when we kind of go, what do I need to do with that? or what do I need to make of that? Because that's where we get looped right back into some kind of story. So let's not even bother going there. Information shows up. This is what is being experienced, what we are aware of in the now moment, and let it just be that. Because if we allow, if we allow it to just be that, it'll pass through. It'll move through. It will integrate very, very easily, very effortlessly. If we go right back into the story, then we're stuck again. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I've got to say that's a really hard thing to ask of people, to try and disengage the mind.
Well, yes and no. I mean, because the fact is that in this energetic climate, things are moving so quickly. Things are shifting and changing so quickly. We know that we're all kind of getting impacted by this energy. We're changing moment to moment to moment. We also know, or if we're paying attention, we're beginning to understand that there is, how do I want to say this, that every single time we do go into the story, every single time we engage the mind, we're going to be in some level of suffering. And so because this energy is so intense and so impactful right now, doesn't it make sense that every time we kind of try to go down the same road that we've always gone down, every time we go back into the story or we try to engage the mind in this kind of energetic climate, it's like we're not very comfortable very quickly. And however, if we just allow ourselves to be present with what's showing up, feel whatever is showing up, then we move through it. I don't know about you, but in this energetic climate, there is no way out but through, right? And so, and we just keep getting bombarded with higher and higher frequencies. And those higher and higher frequencies are meant to dismantle our identities. And our identities are based on nothing else but our stories. So it all goes hand in hand. We have to let go of the story in order to let go of the identity, and vice versa.
Okay, but what happens when we let go of the identity?
Ooh, that's where it gets scary.
Who am I? Who am I without my identity?
Well, see, this is it. And so when you say, I love this, Sandy, this is great. When you say, well, that's a hard thing to ask, to let go of the mind. It's only a hard thing to ask because we're so identified with our stories. We're so identified with, with our identities that we don't want to let go of that. But again, it's like, how many times do we have to be kind of, clubbed upside the head and be uncomfortable in a story before we'll simply say, you know what, I just don't think I'm going to go there this time. So, like, for instance, it's like we all have these repetitive cycles, right? Where that's the loop that catches us every time. For some people, it'll be about money. For some people, it's about relationships. For some people, who knows? And, family matters or whatever. And that's the issue that keeps hooking us every single time. But what if one time that information comes cycling around and we kind of go, yeah, no, not this time. Yeah, I'm just not going to engage. I really just don't feel like going there. I'm not going to address it or think about it in the same way I've thought about it before. In that very moment, something just got short-circuited. In that very moment, there's an identity shift that is palatable. Does that make? And so this is where little shifts and changes like that make. I mean, we're going to have to get really good at that, quite frankly, because if not, we just get continually bombarded with these high frequency information coming in, right? It's blowing out all of the lower frequency information. But the interesting thing is that if you don't let it blow out, then this high frequency energy is just compacting it all that much more. It's making it more. It can make it more intense to go through, and so our identities collectively are just being rattled to the very core right now. And people will say, oh my gosh, I think I'm losing my mind. It's like, I think I'm in all of these different places at the same time, or I can't stay focused in any one reality. Part of the reason they're having that experience is because we're not separate realities. We're all realities. We're not separate little experiences that have been kind of categorized by the mind. We are awareness itself. We are what we are aware of. And so this is what this high vibrational frequency information or energy that's really permeating every single aspect of our being is kind of, trying to make us aware of. We're not our little compartmentalizations. We're not our minds. We are what we are conscious of. We are consciousness itself.
I have to say that my mind immediately wants to respond to that, and I feel I feel very inhibited now. Tell me about some of the, you're working with people every day, and you work at a pretty intense, high level with some people that you've been working with for a long time. What are these people experiencing when they do let go of the mind? What does that look like? How can you entice me to let go of my mind?
Oh, let's see. Well, I could say something. So this way is the way I would entice you. Ease, grace, and joy. Right? So we're only going to, we can only allow ourselves to suffer for so long. We can only allow ourselves to be uncomfortable for so long. And then we're going to ask that question, how is it that we can move into ease, grace, and joy? How is it that we can make this, quote unquote, easier? And when we ask that question, a lot of times people think, oh my gosh, okay, there's going to be some little magic wand that's going to allow, hey Sandy, I'm getting a little bit of vibration, and so I'm hearing myself twice, so it's been a little bit hard to, okay. Go, I don't hear it now. Is that okay?
Yes, it is. It is echoing, Suzy, and we are almost out of time for this segment. Is there something you can say very briefly and succinctly that will answer that question?
Yeah, I guess that the enticing is ease, grace, and joy. We're only going to allow ourselves to suffer for so long, and we'd like to think that there's some magic wand that's going to take that away. But what actually takes it away is a diminishing of the mind or the mental noise and an opening up of a greater sense of space. And so if we want to continue to engage the mind, we can, we all have the right to do that. We all have that opportunity. But we're really getting into a place in the energetics that are taking place right now where, one way or another, the mind is almost starting to feeling like it's distorted, right? And so, and those distortions are coming about for a very good reason. It's like we're being asked to shake that mind loose. We're being asked to move into a state of being present and feeling what we're experiencing.
Suzy, we're going to have to leave it here. I think I'm grasping what you said.
Thanks, Sandy.
You're listening to What is Going On's Energy and Integration series. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and we'll be back after this break with Lee Harris. Don't go away.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Hi, this is New Age Grammy winner Paul Avgerinos. Thanks for listening to OMTimes Radio, and please support my peaceful healing music with a purchase at iTunes, Amazon, or wherever you shop for fine music. Just put my name into the search engine, Paul Avgerinos. A, V like Victor, G like George, E-R-I-N-O-S. You can also visit me at roundskymusic.com. Thanks for listening, and I'm wishing you the brightest of blessings.
I'm Fidel Nshambo. I was born in a city called the Bukavu in the Congo. We were a loving family, and then, boom, everything that I had disappeared in a single day. People think that when you are a refugee and they resettle you to America, and all your problems are done. They don't understand that that's the beginning of everything. I was not born a refugee. I was made one.
It's time we welcome refugee families with open arms. Learn more at embracerefugees.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back to segment 2 of the Energy and Integration Show, and to energy intuitive artist and musician Lee Harris. Lee, hi.
Hi, Sandy. Great to be with you.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm in Costa Rica, so I'm very good.
You're very good.
Yeah, we're here running a retreat in this amazing place, Blue Spirit. So, yeah, we're having a good time.
Oh, enjoy. Lee, I had to smile when I read your November energy update, and you said that November is going to be a month of very elevated energy. I'd literally just been speaking to one of my favourite astrologers, Alison Chester-Lambert, who said the very same thing.
Oh, that's great.
And it's not just because of Brexit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think for me, there are themes that we are in that are playing out across years at a time. But then, of course, what I notice is these peaks that we have around certain repetitive energies. And it's interesting, there has been a lot more grace for a lot more people since September, but for others there is still this almost grind into a new identity, a new reality. A lot of what I'm noticing is a lot of people who perhaps would like to be feeling more elevated getting into the grind in personal relationships. So the stuff that other people around them are going through is actually giving them a chance, while they support those people or help those people, to not necessarily get pulled off their own path, but just pull out any last debris that they have that's similar to those that they may be helping, who perhaps you perceive are a little bit emotionally heavier than you, or don't have the same outlook as you do around how you can help to create your reality. But there's something to that as well, because all of us have been in that place at one time or another in our life, and we've certainly been in interaction with that energy. So for some people, they might not feel dense in themselves, but they're really serving and helping the density that's rising up in their loved ones or people they're working with, and getting their own debris out that way, if you like, because there is a resonance whenever we help or support anybody. You know, we don't do it in a bubble. There's always something there for us to learn or let go of or receive.
You know what I find fascinating about what's going on energetically right now, and what has been going on energetically for some time, is that we wanted growth, we wanted progression, we wanted elevation, ascension, all of those things moving forward. And of course, you can't move forward without having some kind of disruption, of something else going on. And that's the bit that people are finding hard to deal with. And the energy, I don't think anybody expected that the energy would feel so intense.
I think what I see is it goes in waves. And for example, if you're listening right now and you're in exactly what you're describing, Sandy, you're like, oh my God, this is so intense, then it's really important to trust and realize that it can and will move. I understand that we all just go through cycles as we live, and every decade gives us a different experience. Every new experience that we have informs who we become. But within that, we're constantly going through these cycles. And my feeling around the people who have felt that things are intense for a very long time is that there are changes that they need to make, either in some of their outer circumstances or in the way they approach their outer circumstances. So, for example, it's interesting, this is coming up at the retreat we're running right now. I was talking about the word responsibility, because we have 50 people here, and they're from 10 different countries, so all over the world. And that always gives you a map of what's going on worldwide for people who feel they're a light worker or a sensitive or an awakened being or an empath, however they identify. And the word responsibility, one of the things I'm talking about is there are 2 R's in responsibility. There's the responsibility that we have toward the outside world, and there's the responsibility that we have toward ourselves in order to serve the outside world. And I see a lot of healers and awakened people, and I did this myself for years, neglect the inner R, the one that's actually in our own chest, because we're looking at the big R in the outside world, our responsibility to help the world, save the world. And I think those stages that you go through as someone who wants to see an elevated consciousness, there's a lot of grief because there is a lot of pain and suffering in the world. So for me, one of the big breakthroughs I had several years ago was accepting the suffering in the world. And when I actually realized, okay, there is suffering here, it's not going to go away in a hurry because it's part of the energy template. So now my job is to choose when I can help it in others, when I have to deal with it in myself, and when I need rest and when I need fun. Because the best thing we can really do is find a balance in ourselves. Because if you think about it, there are those people who walk into a room and just their energy field changes the molecules. They walk in and you're like, oh my God, I want to be near that person. They seem so calm and they're smiling. There's a reason they're like that, and it's not just luck and it's not just circumstance. And often those people have been through the hardest challenges, but they've created in themselves a template and a way of being and a way of dancing in and out of these intense energies that's working for them. So to circle full back to what you've led us into here is my real message would be, if it's been intense for you for a long time, what changes do you need to make in your outer circumstances or in your inner world, the way that you deal with your outer circumstances? So do you feel you have to save the world? That's going to hurt at a certain point. Or do you feel that we, the world, are doomed? That's going to hurt at a certain point. So there's something about re-owning your own heart, your own core of experience, and getting back to some of the innocence that kids have. Because children are just kind of curious about everything, and they're like, wow, look at this world, and I want to touch that, and I want to run into that. And we tend to lose that through socialization, and also as, I'll use the word healers loosely again, because not everyone identifies as a healer, but people who want to bring good energy to the world. You can lose that when you get too entrenched in the idea that if you lift the suffering of everyone around you, that's going to be enough for you. And the truth is, it isn't. You need the time with you as well for your own personal journey, and then you can dance between those two poles on a daily basis.
Yeah, balance. I mean, maintaining balance is a challenge right now, especially, I always look at the astrology, and it just amazes me how accurately the world reflects, what the cosmos is showing us. And, we're in a bit of an unbalanced time, so it's all the more important to find balance within yourself, because you're not necessarily going to find it outside of yourself.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because the floor has changed. So, the floor is not what it was in 2011. Yeah. So we all got used to that. I work with a personal trainer, and whenever she tries to get me to stand on a Bosu ball, it's a nightmare. I'm like, I can't stand on this thing. Can't we do something else? So, it's a bit like we're all trying to balance on a Bosu ball right now, standing on a Bosu ball. And I think that's the point. The axis of the energy really did change and shift before 2012, actually. And then in the years after 2012, what I feel has happened is the energy changed then. And what we're now seeing is the ripple effect of the energy changes in our outer circumstances, which is why some of the world stuff has become so dramatic.
Yeah. One of the other
things how we emotionally respond to that. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things that made me smile reading your energy report was where you talked about daydreams and flashbacks to other times, other relationships, other places in your life. Neptune, which is the planet of dreams, the planet, where everything can be somewhat nebulous and dreamlike, is extremely active right now. It's in retrograde in Pisces, I believe, and adding to the already challenging mix of other planetary aspects. But you are picking up exactly on the astrology. And one of the things that Neptune does is it makes people feel a yearning, you know, a yearning for the past or a yearning for something, all these flashbacks that you're talking about. Say a little bit about how you picked up on that one and what you see there.
It's funny. There's a guy called the Leo King who does astrology, and he contacted me many years ago. Nice guy, and does, I think he has quite a lot of followers for what he does. And he said he'd been following my updates for a long time, and he said they're always in line with the astrology. So I actually love astrology, but I don't tend to look at astrological reports. I've had some readings, and you know, I think it's great. But to me, that's interesting because it shows, I guess, it shows how all of this stuff is readable to us. This is in the air. It's happening, and I think we're at this interesting time where, before now, there has been a lot of skepticism and a lot of belittling of energy science, if you like, and the truth of energy. And now we're in this interesting period of time where more and more science is backing this stuff up, which is fantastic. Even though, of course, there are those quarters that don't want to look at that side of things, but there is a growing movement around this. Regarding the flashbacks, that was interesting to me because what happens in an energy update is I sometimes identify personally with maybe one thing that comes through, but the rest is a little nebulous to me personally. And then what happens, and I recorded it, you know, a few days ago, what's been happening to me in the last couple of days is exactly the same thing, flashbacks and kind of daydreams. And what it can do for us is, I think it's a couple of things. It's a shedding of the past as we're moving into a new reality. So the best example I could give of this is if you're somebody who gets into a new romantic relationship and there was some wounding in the last one or something that you didn't resolve, what you often experience in those first months or even years is like a healing from the last one. It's like this new relationship gives you an opportunity to heal some of the debris that was left from before. So in a way, that's what happens as we go through life. We grow, and two things. We look back at what happened to us very differently 10 years later, because we can usually have a more compassionate and more rounded viewpoint on the whole circumstance because we've lived a little more. But also these things can just happen very shamanically. So you're not even thinking about an old experience or focusing on it, but suddenly there's a flashback that your soul sends you, because we are constantly in school, right? As souls, we're constantly learning and being moved through a process. So these are like little flashcards or slides that pop up for you in your mind's eye to tell you something. And I'm always saying to people who get very obsessive about that, I'm like, hey, if you can't work it out, don't worry. But if you can, if it helps you make a connection, if you're someone who looks into the symbolism of dreams and daydreams, then go for it. But often it's like a clear out that's happening for people so that they can move into the new place that they're in now without some of the weighted history of the past.
Yeah, and we certainly seem to have a lot of clearing out to do, don't we? In fact,
oh, yes.
I would say that the whole life's journey is one big clearing out.
Well, and it's funny, Sandy, because this kind of goes back to what you were saying a minute ago. I think for a lot of us, that decade between, I'll speak for myself here, 2000 to 2010, and then for other people who've perhaps been on this path since the 80s or before, that was a very imbibe high energy time, bring high energy down to the planet. And now we're seeing what I call the descension process in action, which is a lot of light workers getting into their bodies, getting into their stuff, and the emotional temperature of the world is matching them enough for them to clear themselves, rather than having to bring in elevated consciousness and perhaps clear other people. So I think if you're in an edgy time, if you're like, Jesus, I didn't think it was going to be like this, I thought it was going to be a bit more graceful, trust that thought. It will be more graceful, but this is the swamp that you're walking through to try and re-navigate your life and where you go next. And really hold that intention, because especially if you've got disbelief, especially if you're like, oh my God, I didn't think this was going to be what it was. Well, you weren't wrong. You're just in a period that you didn't foresee as part of the getting to the place of feeling more at peace with yourself and at peace with the current moment, even if there's something going on on the left or the right that could have destabilized you in the past. That's the other piece. Lots of people recognizing, wow, this would have really knocked me off my feet 3 years ago. And now it just, made me feel not great for a few hours. And there's that level of progression that lots of people are seeing too, which is great.
Yeah. Well, the other thing in your energy report for November, and let's not forget on November the 6th, we've got the American midterm elections on the day of a new moon, pretty much, near enough. And you talked about feminine energy. So tell us a little bit about what you are picking up that is happening around the feminine energy right now.
Well, I know we don't have much time left, so I'll try and be brief. I know that we've touched on the Me Too movement, and it's interesting how the feminine voice is rising through females at the moment. The one thing about feminine energy, and I did a whole channel on it for this month, Feminine Energy Rising, is that the masculine energy, I should say, rather than the males, because we all have masculine and feminine energy in us. And that is now needing the feminine energy to take its place, to come forward so that not just women, but the feminine is seen and heard and felt. And one of the things that came in the channel is it said, if you think of a mother who is protecting her child, she is the fierce feminine. She is fiercely and lovingly nurturing that child while also fiercely keeping away from that child anything she needs to do to protect its purity and its vulnerability. And that was a metaphor that was given as to that's what the feminine feels like. You might say things that seem inconvenient or that feel a bit fierce to certain people, but if you're saying them with an intent to create space and peace, that's going to be your feminine energy coming online. So for a lot of people, it's going to be saying things they've never said, but saying things to cause a shift in action. And I think it's really interesting that politically at the moment there's a big push for more women to be in those positions. I mean, that would be a start. That would be a beginning if we could get more female bodies in there. However, the truth be told, there are men who hold incredible balanced energy too. So it's not to get too stuck on genders, but to recognize that the feminine energy, just like women, has been suppressed and devalued and unseen for a very long time. And now it's coming back as part of this light revolution that we're in. You could look at it as a bit of a battle of light and dark right now. The dark is roaring, and so the light is getting stronger and stronger as well.
And it's interesting that you mentioned the word fierce, because let's not forget that feminine energy can be fierce as well when it really, needs to be. Lee, absolutely. We're out of time. Thank you.
Lovely
it's
to be
always
with
a pleasure speaking with you. Until next month.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You're listening to What Is Going On's Energy and Integration Show. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and after the break, we'll be hearing from visionary speaker, author, and multi-dimensional seer, Suzy Miller.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Hi, this is recording artist and composer Yuval Ran, inviting you to a voyage through the chakras, a new double album of guided meditations to transform your life, a sublime musical medicine for nourishing inner peace and reaching to your higher virtues. Get it now at metamindfulnessmusic.com, METTA mindfulnessmusic.com. www.omtimes.com.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Well, talk about flashbacks and time slips. That segment you just heard with Lee was actually recorded earlier this week because he is in Costa Rica doing some workshops there. And, of course, at that time we did think that Suzy was going to be on in segment 3. Instead, we've got Jim Self. Jim, welcome back.
Hi, Suzy. Hi, Suzy. Nice to be here.
Yeah, this is interesting.
All kinds of things get strange, isn't it? So,
we're changing identities.
There you go. Actually, there's a lot of truth to that. So it's nice to be in this position, listening to Suzy talk and listening to Lee talk, and then being able to kind of follow up on some of those things that are being said. You know, these are really delightful people that are very, very much in tune with what's going on. And one of the things that I think probably all three of us would say is, gee, I wish we could just sit down together and play, because it's very stimulating when you start to listen to each one of us talking about different things and the similarity. And the piece particularly that Suzy was talking about with regard to time and with regard to how time works, and this particular moment was very much right on, but as you were having a little bit of challenge saying, how do I wrap my mind around that? Mm-hmm. To a great extent, that is exactly what the impediment is to beginning to engage in this whole process. The mind is, when we play in Mastering Alchemy, and when we begin to really look at this, one of the things that we begin to look at is the rational mind, that thinking mind, how we navigate this kind of third-dimensional world that we play in. When you begin to really look at what is its purpose, you begin to see its purpose is to keep you safe and have you fit in. And in that context of keeping you safe and having you fit in kind of the nature of time, it very much is about these things that happened in the past, we don't want them to happen in the future. And a lot of what we were told in the past must be the truth of how we navigate the future. So when you begin to look at how people move through their life, they very much spend the great part of time not in present time, but in the past and in the future. One of the interesting parts of my awareness is there are 5 different constructs of present time, not one. And so when you ask the average person in the street, tell me what time is, they will say past, present, future, and then you die. And that's all there is to it. But when you start to begin to get into this space of present time, and when you begin to realize that the rational mind continuously drags history into your awareness and says, don't you remember, and danger, or this is what you must do, to a great extent we are in a kind of a very rigid point of perception about how the world, how we navigate, how we all exist. The challenge that we're all facing, and the opportunity that we're all facing, same challenge and opportunity, is how we perceive our reality is clearly expanding. But if you try to make what is being presented in the expansion pulled into the box of the perception of what it should be, this is the place where I'm watching lots of people have challenges, because you can't take your baggage on this journey. And so when a person is now, where both Lee and Suzy were talking about, these elevated vibrations are, in a way, they, right now, and we talked about this last month, in this space of shift, there is somewhat of a suspension, meaning time is kind of in a present time moment, and that the energetics that hold what was in place are somewhat loosening up. And so a lot of the I'm not okay that we've stuffed into our backpack that we never want to look at again, I did these bad things, or I was embarrassed, or I don't want people to know, they're not so rigidly stuck in your backpack anymore. And they're all beginning to more or less percolate up to the top of the awareness to be let go of. There is a lot of people, you and I have talked about this before right now, that are experiencing two type of experiences. One of is an anxiety. And that anxiety is what's going wrong or what's going on. And the perception is that there's something wrong. Whereas when a person gets into present time, and when a person begins to find a couple of very significant alignments of energy, neutral, balanced, calmness, perception, observation rather than engagement, what you begin to find is a lot of what's coming up is from a past time, and so you're in one of the present time loops, which is somewhat of a circular time. That which has happened that wasn't cleaned out will kind of circle around and come back into a different presentation of itself in a future time. Quite often, though, that future time, when it occurs, is not future at all. It's like, oh my God, this is going on. Why is this happening to me again? The person that's beginning to observe it from a place of understanding that if I just take a breath and kind of find neutral and observe, you begin to find that it really has almost nothing to do with you right now. It's just this flashback, if you would. This is happening to me again. But it really isn't the preponderance of the experience that's going on. It's just a component of the experience. And when paused, neutral, balanced, you look at it, to a great extent you realize, oh wait, I don't have to engage with this. And so it begins to disappear. It's just like an air bubble underwater meeting the atmosphere, and it just goes away. Does that make any sense?
It does. It does. I still have to say that this whole thing about the mind, are we meant to be losing our minds?
Yes.
And just going with the flow?
Well, let's look at it this way. What would happen if maybe there was another configuration that if you, let's call it a platform, that if you just stepped over here, the ability to perceive everything that has been going on, is going on with you, allows you to view it somewhat differently. So Lee was just talking about the feminine nature of what's coming up, and it is very much coming up. But let's define feminine and masculine with a little different alignment. Feminine is the first impulse of creation. And feminine has no straight lines and no angles. So it is this flowing movement that has really no definition in terms of structure. Whereas masculine energy is constructed of straight lines and angles. So if you were to begin to decide, I'm going to align myself and view my world from a different position than I usually do, worrying about my past and future, and you begin to, let's say, put on some words. So you wear a suit of words. So a word like certain or precise, focus, capable, very much has straight lines and angles to them. But a word like gracious and kindness, appreciation, gratitude, no straight lines and no angles. So if you could begin to perceive your world in present time, you would recognize a feeling, very much a heart feeling, beginning to understand that you think from the heart. You don't think from the rational mind. If we had a lot of time, I'd explain to you that the rational mind lives in the first chakra with a broken ego and has the perception of the world that it's all about the survival of itself. But in fact, when you begin to put on those words and you step into present time and you observe your experience from certain, capable, gracious, you begin to allow the world to work. What happens to, and I've watched this for years with the thousands of Mastering Alchemy students, you begin to realize that a great part of the noise that I'm perceiving my world as my world isn't even my world at all. It's the noise of the collective consciousness. And so as you start to experience vibrations in the heart and begin to perceive from that alignment in the heart, you realize that a lot of what we deal with really isn't even ours. And that's a space where you start to think from the heart much more so than think from that rational state of worry, anxiety, and fear.
When you say think from the heart, are you talking about responding to feeling rather than thought?
Well, see, this is where the mind defines feeling. And one of the... so think about, or just, if I said to you, you know what appreciation is, you know what gratitude feels like. For the most part, we experience it and then we're out of it. We move on. Those are very light, moving frequencies. They don't have a lot of density and they don't have structure. But if you were able to create a structure, the cup to hold the feminine, in a manner of speaking, and you could begin to have a sense of yourself as capable, as certain, as able to perceive and not engage, that alignment allows you to simply enjoy yourself perceiving a world that is unfolding versus the world that is leaving.
Okay. I have to say there are several thoughts that go through my mind
Sure.
in response to that, but it doesn't feel appropriate, I think, to even voice them, seeing as I'm supposed to be trying to lose my mind.
Well, hold on a second. Let's see if I can figure that out. So, are you hearing an interruption?
I'm certainly hearing, it sounds like somebody's alarm is going off.
Hold on a second, let's see.
We're getting a real example tonight,
Okay.
you know, of plans and timing and all sorts of things that we think we control and we don't.
Yeah, yes. So let's take that, what we just are saying here about perceiving from a different platform. A platform that has allowing also attached to it. A platform that's not rigid. A platform that doesn't say, well, I know what's going to happen if this, and this happens. A platform that simply says, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not fearful. I'm not concerned. See, one of the things we learn as humans, we go to school, we basically are told, figure it all out, and then step into it when you know the answer to what's going to happen. And yet we still are tenuous about stepping into life in some places, even though we're told this is how it's going to work. But what would happen if you could just basically begin to recognize that this space we're moving into is about stepping into to have experience and to perceive a reality on your terms and create a reality that you wish to enjoy. That's a big tenet of Mastering Alchemy. We're we play. But one of the pieces that's beginning to happen, I said right now in this period of time is kind of in a suspension. It's there in a number of ways. So this sense of déjà vu is actually beginning to be an awareness in another aspect of present time, which is referred to as simultaneous time. So not only are you beginning to find that when you're in present time, you can begin to have an awareness and draw to you that thought of an experience that you have had in the past. That part makes sense. Oh, I had a dream, or I remembered. But the part that's not making sense is, what about the future simultaneous points that are equally available to you? So where we're playing and what I'm watching, and when it's understood, the ability to be in present time and basically align with an energy pattern that you wish to create from becomes very available to you simultaneously in a future point, a past point, or a present point.
Jim, I'm going to have to interrupt you there and appropriately say we're absolutely out of time. I look forward to speaking with you next month. Perhaps we can pick this up again then. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer. That's it for tonight. We'll see you next month.